Conclusion on race for a while, hopefully. First, let me respond to what I think are the three biggest lies about me. Contra Evogen videos and daytimes, I don't say genes are irrelevant. I say that one doesn't have to find specific genes in order to infer the heritability of a trait. If this standard was applied to the rest of biology, we wouldn't be able to infer that different breeds of wolves, for example, have different traits that are innate, because we'd have to find all the specific genes, and thus biology would be crippled. This is a race-specific standard that you have to find genes in order to ever infer heritability. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do genetics or that genes are irrelevant. In fact, I think genes are very relevant. I'm simply saying that you don't need to find the genes to infer heritability or narrow sense heritability. Contra the skeptical heretic, I am not against peer review. I simply say that it's not some gold standard of good science, and just because an article isn't published doesn't mean it's not technically sound, because a lot of journals will keep out articles because they're not considered significant enough. So just because an article failed to get past peer review doesn't mean it's a bad article. It could just be not considered worthy of the journal for the topic or whatever. And the peer review process can also become politicized. This is really old news. The skeptical heretic, having watched my video, knew that this was my position, and even mentioned that in the articles I linked, they didn't advocate the complete abolition of peer review, yet the skeptical heretic said that I do. So this was not an honest mistake. This was an intentional lie. The skeptical heretic was lying, and he knew he was lying. Okay. He was right about the Alex Sokol issue. I got that wrong. I said that Alex Sokol published in a peer-reviewed journal when he didn't. So that's a fair criticism. But other than that, he was mostly lying about my position and reading the phone book. Basically saying a bunch of things that are irrelevant to the race debate and saying it somehow disproves me or something. I call that reading the phone book. And contra Sophia Roon, I spend time on this topic because of its important political implications. Not that my position itself was initially formed because of the political implications. See? And because that's what Sophia Roon was saying. She was saying that I told her that I formed my position based on the political implications, and that's not true. I told her that I spend so much time on this topic because of the political implication. And this is a very strange lie to say about someone simply because it's not very believable. Like, why would anyone say that? Even if it were true, even if my initial views were formed because of the political implications, why would I tell her that? It's so odd. And Sophia says this occurred in a private conversation where it's impossible to falsify. Anyway, there's a bunch more lies, like I think race mixing is wrong or evil, or that I think IQ perfectly measures intelligence, or that I'm a disciple of Rushton. I mean, nothing against Rushton, but I think the egalitarians are lying about him too. But one must ask, why do the egalitarians lie so much? Why do they lie and lie and lie and lie? Is it because I personally pose such a huge threat to them? Well, that's probably not true. I mean, it would make myself feel good if that were the case, but that's probably not the case. I think it's because egalitarians hold a fundamentally impossible position, and it's causing cognitive dissonance, which is making them enraged. Man left Africa. He evolved differently in different environments with clear superficial differences. Okay. There was enough evolution to create semi-discrete superficial clusters that we call races, or populations, or breeds, or whatever. Man also evolved different brain morphologies, different total brain sizes, and from what little evidence we have, different compositions. So not only is the total size different, but from what little evidence we have, it appears to be different. You know, different substructures of the brain are different sized on average across the different races, as you would expect. I mean, what are the odds that they'd all end up exactly the same? And populations with the largest brains, the Arctic peoples and certain Native American tribes, they're actually impoverished. So that basically takes economic arguments off the table. What is the likelihood that these populations with radically differently sized brains have precisely identical cognitive function? That the brains would somehow function in precisely the same way? That's the egalitarian position. By what evolutionary mechanism would the brain sizes change as man evolves into different races, yet maintain precisely identical function. Brains consume calories, and big brains consume more calories. You're not going to get larger brains just for the heck of it. A big brain costs things. Intelligence has a cost, just like strength has a cost, speed has a cost. And that's why you don't see people with giant Zeppelin brains, right? And that's why you don't see humans, without even working out, having physiques of bodybuilders, or all humans, without even training, being able to run the 100-meter dash in 9 seconds flat. All these things have a cost. Wu and Zhang have argued that the genes associated with neuron development show more signs of population-based selection than pigmentation between the three populations of the HapMap project: East Asians, Nigerians, and Dutch. Differences in lactose tolerance rates show that evolution happens fast, and there's a ton of new research coming out showing that evolution happens fast. This is the Schwerpunkt. This is the focal point. This is the center of gravity. Everything else hinges on this evolutionary narrative. I don't have to say precisely what selective pressures cause the changes in total brain volume between populations, just as I don't have to pinpoint the precise selective pressures to know that race differences in muscle mass were a result of selective pressures. There's some evidence that colder climates select for larger brains. We could get into that later, but the specific evolutionary pressures that cause the changes, that's extra credit. Whenever you're debating race, this is what it's ultimately about. Populations out of Africa evolving in different environments, and we've established that there are different average brain morphologies. Are bigger brains better? What does IQ really mean? Are the big brain populations more intelligent in ways that are not measured by IQ tests? What do the sex differences mean? How do we define and categorize race? Is the word race even appropriate for what we're talking about? These are all interesting issues. But before we can even get into those, we must establish the basics. Did people fan out throughout the globe? Yes. Was there racial differentiation, or breed differentiation, or population differentiation, or Zaxel-Bax-Glugelbop differentiation, whatever you want to call the races, whatever non-race word you want to call the races, was there differentiation regarding the brain between them? Yes. So, is racial equality in terms of cognitive function even remotely possible? No. It's virtually impossible. It's not a real position. It's an ideological assumption. And I used to believe it. Okay, I went to the same schools you went to, and I know that it's a childhood presupposition that egalitarians are now defending as adults. It wasn't logically shown. Right? Nobody came to egalitarian views on race through some, Socratic discourse or anything. It was just assumed in all discourse at a very young age, and so it seems right. And now, as adults, they are defending this impossible position. I have only seen 2 egalitarians who actually address the Schwerpunkt head-on. Everyone else just tries to divert or character assassinate or whatever. Those 2 are Sophia Roon and Astro Cow. Those the only 2 that I've met who have actually tried to. And I'm going to tell you their argument, how they actually address this. And if you're a reasonable person, you'll be shocked that people who appear to be as smart as they are, and I believe they are very smart in terms of having a high IQ and having a lot of brain power, you'll be shocked that they could actually make an argument like this. Their argument is that no environment on the planet would select against intelligence for humans. Therefore, all identifiable races, populations, haplotype clusters, whatever, all of them have, on average, precisely identical cognitive function. Okay? Now, they merely put this forward as a possibility, right? They don't say that this is definitely the case, but they say, oh, but you can't rule it out. That's what they're saying. But even saying that this is a possibility is all I need to know that they are not neutral and they are not objective on these issues. Now, what's interesting is that Pieface, on the other hand, is so stupid that he actually ceded the Schwerpunkt, along with vomiting a torrent of lies about what I believe. But what this shows is that someone, Pieface, who is too stupid to understand the absolute necessity of defending the Schwerpunkt, was able to understand how egalitarianism is impossible. Sophia and Astrielkow are smart enough to understand the necessity of defending the Schwerpunkt, and so they have to put forward this retarded theory. Their ideology demands it. Right? It's not that they're stupid people, it's just that they have no choice but to say something this stupid because of their stupid ideology. Now, in practice, what an egalitarian will try to do is try to push the debate as far away from the Schwerpunkt as possible. They don't want to establish the basic narrative, because if they do that, then their position is sunk from the outset. Equality is impossible. Okay, so what they want to do is they want to go straight into the hedgerows. They want to go straight into minutiae about IQ, technical combos about genetics, the finer points of anthropology, all before establishing the basic narrative. Now, these topics, IQ, genetics, anthropology, these things complicate the debate. I think that they're worth going into eventually, but they do in fact complicate the debate. I'm not saying that that's good or bad. It's just, as a matter of fact, they complicate things. And these complications allow egalitarians to lie about people like me, or to actually catch people like me to be wrong on things, which I am. I am wrong from time to time. So are they. Now, Sophia Roon not only does this, but she makes the case that these peripheral issues are actually core issues, and she really works at it. Okay, Sophia Roon is very much aware of everything I'm saying right here. Okay, she knows all this is true, and that's why she's acting the way she's acting. She is the smartest egalitarian that I've ever met, and aside from some kind of blunderous misstatements of my positions, she's defended this ultimately indefensible position perfectly, or about as well as anyone can expect for someone to defend it. She understands the necessity of defending the Schwerpunkt, but realizing that she can't defend the Schwerpunkt from any kind of sustained probing, she has to divert attention to other topics, into technical genetics and IQ stuff. And the way she does this is by raising the bar. Okay, and this is what sets her apart from other egalitarians. She says that to infer narrow sense heritability, you have to find specific genes. Or you have to establish the specific evolutionary pressures in order to infer that there were differing evolutionary pressures on brain development between races. Okay? And neither of these statements are true. You don't have to do those, right? You don't have to define the evolutionary pressures to infer that there were in fact evolutionary pressures. So you don't have to find the specific genes to infer narrow sense heritability. Now, I bet before she debated me, she was always able to get away with this. She could always raise the bar, right? Demand genes or whatever, and she could raise the bar however she wanted, and nobody would question her because she's a geneticist. She's the professional. She knows what the standards are, right? So basically, she could make up the standards, and people would just go along with it. Because they wouldn't know well, should I argue with her? I don't know what the correct standards of science are. I'll just go with what she says. She's the professional. And people are really digging on her for doing this. Because I basically responded to her, asked her to provide an argument for this, and she gave no argument for this. There is no argument for this. She's pulling these standards out of her ass. And people are really digging on her for that. But I say, don't dig on her for that. We've all been there. I defended the Bible. Right, I was a Baptist. Okay, I was a fundy. I was Mr. Revelations. Okay, and I defended the Bible through and through. Okay, I know what it's like to have cognitive dissonance. On the one hand, having to believe in religion, but on the other hand, trying to be as rational and scientific as possible. I probably didn't defend the Bible as thoroughly as Sophia is defending egalitarianism, but I think I know what she's going through. Okay, I know the kind of cognitive dissonance that egalitarians are going through, trying to simultaneously believe in evolution, but denying evolution in the one instance where it would be politically incorrect. It's why Stephen Jay Gould lied about Samuel George Morton in his book. Gould knew what the implications of differing brain morphologies were, and more modern studies vindicate Morton, and they vindicate the old racialists. We're dealing with an emotional fear of the mystery of racism. The rage-inducing cognitive dissonance of a contradictory belief structure, and also the desire to maintain one's status within atheist cult. And finally, even when they do come around, what egalitarians will do is they'll continue to lie about you. they'll say, oh, well, I believe in racial differences in cognition. I just don't believe in the inherent superiority or that we should judge individuals based on race, and I don't think race is this discrete, concrete thing, right? And of course, none of those things reflect my position. Basically what they're saying, you're right, I held a hilariously stupid position, but I'm too proud to admit that you're right all along. So I'm going to lie about you in order to set myself in opposition to you and say that that's what it was all along. Right? That's usually that's usually their way of admitting that they were wrong all along, is by continuing to lie about you, basically adopt the racial hereditarian position, but then try to paint you out as being, I don't know, some white supremacist bigot, something, in order to set themselves in contradistinction to you, in order to maintain their fantasy that they are confronting the mystery of racism.
Henry Harpending. Some people say that race is not really a biological category at all. In fact, it's nothing more than a social construct. How would you respond to that?
Well, it seems like an awfully silly thing to say. Race in the sense of humans being different from each other, our continental populations different from each other. Sure they are. Breeds of dogs are too. But there's also hybrids between breeds. There's a whole spectrum of dogs that you can find that have all kinds of ancestry. So if you want to say dog breeds are a social construct, you're welcome to. I can't imagine why you'd make a point of saying that, because the underlying biology, my 10-year-old kid knew that.
So race is real to some degree.
Human differences are real. And whether you want to call them races or subspecies or breeds, I don't care. It's not a question that has an answer, because it's just wordplay.